I saw a couple Korean War veterans, hats like you got them right there, and they were over there, and I was over here, and I could hear them kind of whispering, and finally one of them came over to me and said, "Hey, you were in the military, weren't you?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "You're in a pretty long time, right?" I said, "Yeah." "Pretty far up there in rank?" I said, "Yeah." He pointed over his buddy. "I told you he was a sergeant." Best compliment I ever received. Well, hey, thanks a lot for everybody being here today. What I want to start off with, before I say anything, and if something happens, I want to say this. To the behavioral health professionals, the clinicians, and those who support the clinicians, thank you for your service and what you've done for our veterans, my brothers and sisters in arms, because I'm here as a testament to what you can do in order to enable the healing process. So if there are clinicians here or supporters of the behavioral health, please stand up, please. Please, please. Thank you very much. And also the family members who support the veterans, and of course my brothers and sisters in arms, and those who are just here to learn a little bit what it means to be about PTSD, about struggles and the challenges associated with it. I'd like to start off, when I was a battalion commander, I was a battalion commander twice, very fortunate. One of my soldiers here right now, Aaron Brewer, I served in Bakuba, is here. But when I was a basic training battalion commander, I used to go out with my sergeant major, and we'd go around to see the privates interact with the drill sergeants, And so I came around the corner, and I saw a drill sergeant. He had two privates locked up. And the drill sergeant kept going, "Where's your NCOIC? Where's your NCOIC?" Well, the soldiers only been in the Army about a week, right? They didn't know that an NCOIC meant non-commissioned officer in charge. They knew what an NCO was. I mean, they had one in his face, but didn't know what an NCOIC was. So finally, that drill sergeant said, "If you don't tell me where your NCOIC is, you're going to be doing push-ups all the way to China." All of a sudden, that drill sergeant said, "Drill sergeant, I do not know what NCO you see, but you are the only NCO I see." You gotta love privates, right? I would not have known what I was going to see on September. I could never have guessed what I was going to see on September the 12th, 2013. There's no way, that I could have seen the event that I'm going to talk about here today, and all those things that transpired that day and afterwards. I could not see that when I joined the Army in 1985. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about PTSD, suicide, thoughts of suicide. Then I'm going to talk about what that looks like in someone's mind that has suicide, and those things that we struggle with. And then, and most importantly, I'm going to talk about what do we do in the recovery process so we're not one of the 22 or 20. I had a great conversation with Ann before this, and she made up Lisa before this, and she made a great point. She says, why don't we commemorate or recognize the people that survived? Instead of it being 22, how about 550, those that survived the challenges with suicide and PTSD, and celebrate those. So here stands one person, one that survived because of the great work of behavioral health, mental health, the VA specifically, and my brothers and sisters in arms. So what I'd like to do is, the way this will work is I'm going to transition between reading from my book. Some of these things that I'm going to talk about are kind of rough, and I think they say them. I mean, it took me 10 years to write, so I think they say them a little better than I could possibly, just say them off my head. And then I'm going to transition into dialogue, and hopefully afterwards we can have a conversation about what I've learned and what we can learn together to make sure that 22 to 20 goes down to 5, and that we celebrate our victories and not our losses. Just real quick, my book is 5 Wars. Went to war 4 times, but the biggest struggle that I had was the one coming home and the transition. So that's what 5 Wars is about. And my 5th war is the one that I'm going to specifically focus on here. So what I'd like to do is start out, I'm going to read the prologue that kind of sets the conditions and the framework for our discussion here. I finished my beer and thought, where is the best point of departure? I was sitting at the bar on the outdoor deck of my favorite hangout in Jeffersonville, Indiana. The 11th anniversary of 9/11 had been the day before, and I'd come there to think, reflect on the war, lost things, friends, and other things. I wore a t-shirt and shorts. As I looked across the Ohio River to the city of Louisville, Kentucky, nightfall had come and brought with it the brilliant illumination of the downtown skyline, kind of like Newport over here to Cincinnati, right? The purple and yellow lights of the 2nd Street Bridge that connected the two cities merged into a rainbow's array of colors from the office building, hotels, and restaurants of Derby City. Louisville was small compared to places like New York or Chicago. However, the urban glow made it appear enormous and bustling. I often got lost in the panorama of the infrastructure's neon peaks, which oddly reminded me of a view I had of the Hindu Kush in Kabul and the mountains of Afghanistan. I had identified 2 options at Jeffersonville from which I could depart a world that had become too difficult to bear. One good spot lay a little over a half-mile east of the bar on Riverside Drive, which ran parallel to the Ohio River. It was just past it was a monument to veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The height of the drop-off to the river was not ideal. I would have to get enough speed to lift the car beyond the sidewalk in the grassy area at the water's edge. I could have gone a little further down the street where the path to my final destination was more direct and the impact into Ohio's murky depths more likely. However, I liked the idea of departing at the monument. After all, I had served in all 3 wars whose names were engraved in the concrete triangular block: Desert Storm, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Operation Iraqi Freedom. I had also deployed to Bosnia for Operation Joint Endeavor, but that conflict was not recognized. I also liked the western choice. The Falls of Ohio State Park was about a mile away. A statue of Lewis and Clark marked the entrance to the park and the potential point of departure. It commemorated the explorers' first meeting and the start of their expedition, which would take the core discovery across the mostly unexplored territories of America to the Pacific Ocean. I greatly enjoyed the book Undaunted Courage by Stephen Ambrose, which described the journey, and had found Meriwether Lewis interesting. Lewis was a soldier, frontiersman, and politician, and he was a Renaissance man, something that I really wanted to be. He had allegedly committed suicide several years after the expedition, although there remained some controversy over whether he killed himself or whether he was murdered. The entrance to the park had the advantage of having a ledge of adequate height and a more direct route into the river. However, the water was shallow there. If it hadn't rained in a while, the limestone rock and coral fossil beds became completely exposed. The impact with a hard surface would most likely cause my car to explode and result in an almost certain fiery death. There were more effective ways of committing suicide, but I wanted ambiguity, not efficiency. There had to be some reasonable doubt of my intentions. A bullet to the head, hanging, or asphyxiation from vehicle fumes would leave a little question of my motive. I like the idea of going out like Thelma and Louise, who at the end of the movie drove at high speed off the side of a cliff. The glorious arc and momentary midair suspension would give me one final view of the Louisville skyline. I could become absorbed in it, become a part of its beauty, until gravity took me on a downward headfirst collision with the water, followed, I hope, by unconsciousness and drowning. A drunken automobile accident would be a plausible explanation of my death. I would rather be remembered a reckless drunk than another sick soldier. I also chose this method because I didn't want anyone to clean up my mess or have my wife or daughter find me. And I think maybe, subconsciously, I wanted an exit strategy. If at the last minute I realized that this wasn't such a good idea after all, I could escape as the water poured through the open windows of my car. I had been developing my plan throughout the afternoon and into the evening while I drank bourbon and beer. The alcohol had filled a great emptiness and stirred up my courage to see the action through, but I did have reservations. I was not quite committed yet. I decided to do one last reconnaissance of both the east and west options to confirm which would be best. Then maybe I would execute my last mission on Earth and take my place with my dead friends in Valhalla. I had one last shot of bourbon, paid my bar tab. Then I walked to my vehicle, got inside, and put a key in the ignition. So